Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're really pulling back the curtain on the hidden complexities of modern digital threats. We're completely blowing past that old Hollywood trope of a hacker in a hoodie to map out the true architecture of information warfare. It's a fascinating and honestly at times terrifying landscape, so let's get right into it.
All right, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to hit the foundations of information warfare, look at Libicki's 7 domains, unpack the IATF Threat Taxonomy, and compare passive versus active attacks. Then we'll dive into proximity, trust, and distribution before wrapping up with the operational defense paradigm. So starting off with part 1, foundations of information warfare, or the strategic battlefield. Let's set a quick baseline. What actually is information warfare, or InfoWar, if you want to be brief? Basically, it's the use of information and communication technologies, or ICT, to gain a massive competitive advantage over your opponent, period. It's really all about leverage, control, and absolute domination in our digital world. Let's look at the literal equation for this strategic advantage. You take your ICT, multiply it by some serious malicious intent, and boom, that's your competitive edge. And when we think about known weaponized vectors, we're not just talking about old-school viruses or Trojan horses anymore. We're looking at logic bombs, electronic jamming, and even nanomachines. The arsenal out there is absolutely vast and incredibly specialized. Moving on to Section 2, Libicki's 7 warfare domains, taking the macro view. A strategist named Martin Libicki outlined 7 specific domains for this kind of warfare. And what's fascinating is how far they stretch beyond just a computer screen. Sure, you've got hacker warfare and cyber warfare, but check this out. You also have command and control warfare and intelligence-based warfare. That's literally using sensor tech to dominate a physical, real-world battlefield. It even bleeds into electronic warfare, where adversaries use radio and crypto techniques to just totally scramble communications. But here's the thing, we absolutely cannot ignore the non-technical impacts. They are massive. Think about psychological warfare, literally using propaganda and terror to completely demoralize an adversary, or economic warfare, where the goal is to bankrupt a digital business simply by cutting off their flow of information. It's a stark reality check, right? The fallout from these attacks isn't just lines of code. It hits human minds and global markets. Which brings us to Section 3. The IATF Threat Taxonomy, or how we actually classify the attack. So, the IATF classifies threats into 5 distinct vectors, and notice how they all sort of ominously funnel right at the target network in the middle. We've got passive attacks that just quietly intercept data, active attacks that tamper with it, close-in attacks that rely on physical proximity, insider attacks where someone abuses their privilege, and distribution attacks that hijack the supply chain. Honestly, almost every single major breach you read about in the news falls right into one of these 5 buckets. Let's look closer at Section 4, passive versus active attacks, focusing on those purely digital vectors. Let's contrast the first 2. A passive attack is basically a ghost. It's a silent, invisible threat. It's all about pure reconnaissance, just sniffing around. They never actually tamper with your data. An active attack, on the other hand, is loud and destructive. They are actively messing with your data, completely disrupting your communication, or just taking you offline entirely with a denial-of-service attack. Zoom in on passive attacks for a second. Imagine an attacker secretly siphoning a copy of the network traffic as it moves from user A to user B, but they don't alter a single thing. By using tricks like footprinting and network traffic analysis, they can just scoop up clear text credentials and unencrypted data right out of the air. And because there's absolutely no active interaction with the system, man, you could be compromised for months and not a single alarm would go off. Now, active attacks do the exact opposite. They actively break things to get past your security. In this scenario, the connection between user A and user B is literally shattered. The attacker steps right in the middle to disrupt or exploit the connection. We're talking malware, session hijacking, SQL injections, man-in-the-middle attacks. They want into your internal network, and they really don't care how much noise they make knocking the door down. Next up, Section 5, proximity, trust, and distribution, focusing on the physical elements. Here's a scary thought. You can have the most expensive, multi-million-dollar endpoint security system in the world, right? But if an attacker physically walks past your firewall and right into your office building, the whole game changes. This is the human element. It's called a close-in attack. It could be tailgating through a secure door, literally shoulder surfing to watch an employee type their password, or something as shockingly low-tech as dumpster diving for old hard drives. The threat vector here is pure physical proximity. Then we have to talk about the deep psychological betrayal of an insider attack. Your outer perimeter might be built like a fortress, but the threat is coming from the inside. We're talking about trusted personnel, people who already have physical or digital access, and they intentionally misuse it to plant keyloggers, steal devices, or siphon off data. It's incredibly hard to catch because they bypass all the standard security checks. They already have the keys to the castle. And the real-world cost here is absolutely devastating. As you can imagine, these attacks hit the organization's business operations, reputation, and profit hard. They completely shatter the core pillars of security: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Honestly, by the time a company figures out that an employee has been quietly downloading proprietary research for the last 6 months, the damage is already totally done. Now, take that physical element and scale it up, and you get a distribution attack. This is basically a supply chain compromise, and it is terrifyingly simple. Step 1, hardware or software gets modified with a secret backdoor right at the manufacturer. Step 2, it gets tampered with while it's in transit on a delivery truck. Step 3, you, the target, unbox it and unknowingly plug that compromised tech straight into your highly secure network. The attackers were inside your system before you even took the shrink wrap off. Finally, Section 6, the operational defense paradigm, where we bring it all together. So this is the ultimate clash. Think of it as an operational dashboard. On one side, you have these offensive warfare vectors: web attacks, malware, system hacking, all hurtling toward the target over the internet. But standing firm on the other side are your defensive pillars: prevention, deterrence, alerts, detection, emergency preparedness, and response. Information security is literally the wall standing between the two. To pull this all together for you, the adversary's objective is always a strategic advantage. Their vectors range everywhere from silent observation to loud disruption, physical break-ins, insider betrayal, and even supply chain hijacking. And they operate across all of Libicki's technical, human, and economic domains. Remember our core philosophy here on The Explainer? If you want to build an impenetrable defense, you first have to perfectly map the architecture of the offense. Which leaves us with a pretty big question. You now understand the taxonomy of the cyber battlefield, right? You know exactly how the adversary operates. But take a look inward for a second. Just how secure are the physical doors, the trusted insiders, and the hardware supply chains in your own digital perimeter? It's something every single one of us needs to seriously ask ourselves today. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Stay secure out there, and I'll catch you in the next one.